You have someone in your life that you care about, but here's what you know. There's that grudge, that thing you can't forgive them for, that disagreement that's created sort of this Grand Canyon-sized gulf between the two of you. Well, today I want to share with you the first step Jesus invites us to take. The step that's required of us, actually, if we're ever going to heal a broken relationship. Hey, Daily Dosers, here's what you know. If you have children on Christmas, when they get that gift, you know, the big one, that gift usually comes with some assembly required. Well, this week on the Daily Dose, we're talking about how relationships are similar. They require some assembly. In fact, because relationships are made up of humans like you and me, most actually require some reassembly from time to time. Relationships go south. There are disagreements, there are tensions, there are differences. And so here's what we're doing. This week, we're spending the week talking about some practical advice that Jesus gives us, ways that Jesus invites us to rehab and reassemble our relationships. One example of this is found in the book of Matthew, where Jesus gives us an incredibly practical gift. He gives us one thing that we must do in order to reconcile any relationship that's gone wrong. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at Matthew chapter 7, verses 3 through 5. Feel free to stop the video, grab your Bible, follow along, because in Matthew chapter 7, we get some of the most relevant words Jesus ever said. Jesus says this, "Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye?" Now, what's Jesus saying? Well, he's saying when we feel wronged, when there's tension in a relationship, when there's that argument, that disagreement, and we can't find reconciliation, what do? You know what we do. We dig in our heels. It's not my fault. They didn't follow through. He fired me for no good reason. She left me. He's the one who brought up politics. They stole my idea. He ruined Christmas, and we're never, ever going to invite him back. We do this, don't we? Jesus said, "Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye?" And we want to look and say to Jesus, "Look, problem is it's not just a speck of sawdust in his eye. He's got a boulder the size of my house in his eye." But you know, Jesus doesn't stop there. Jesus says, "How can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when all the time there is a plank in your own eye?" You see, Jesus knew that when we're in conflict, we think, if I could just sit them down, and if they would just listen to my side of the story, if they would allow me, if they would permit me to fix their messed up, idiotic, ridiculous, convoluted thinking, well, then the problem would go away. Jesus is saying to us, come on. How can you say to your brother, "Let me take the speck out of your eye"? Jesus goes on to say, "You hypocrite, you actor, quit your charade." Seriously, has that ever worked? Come on. Stop looking at your brother and thinking the problem is all his, and start looking in the mirror. Because as you know, it always takes two to tango. Jesus says, if you really want to reconcile, it has to start with you. You really want to heal that relationship? You've got to identify your plank first. The part you've played, your piece of the pie. What part of it is your fault? Quit acting like you haven't done anything wrong. It doesn't matter how small you think your piece of the conflict is. It doesn't matter how minuscule or how tiny you think your responsibility for that fight was. Jesus says you'll never reconcile until you start with you. And if you do, Jesus promises in the very next verse that you will see clearly. If you first remove the log from your eye, if you first get honest about the part you play, if you first get real about the ways you have contributed to the conflict, Jesus promises that you will see clearly. You can't see clearly now because there's that plank in your eye. But if you start with the part you played, you will see your brother. You'll see that neighbor, that coworker more clearly. You will see their situation, their perspective, their humanity more clearly. And that boulder in their eye, well, it'll look more like a speck of sawdust. You see, when it comes to that someone in your life that you care about, but there's that grudge, that thing you can't forgive them for, that disagreement that's created this distance between the two of you, Jesus wants to give you a gift. The first step that's required of us in order to heal any broken relationship. I've got to own that thing in me that gets in the way. Self-righteousness always gets in the way, while self-awareness always paves the way. You'll never reconcile until you start with you. And if you do, Jesus promises you and me that we will see clearly. Folks, thanks so much for tuning in to the Daily Dose today. If you're watching on Facebook, would you like us? How about this? If you're watching on YouTube, hit the bell so you get notifications. And if you're watching on Cable Access 181, invite a friend to watch with you tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in.